There's this strange thing that happens as you get older, and it's that you don't notice the exact moment your childhood ends.
What does this button do?
You only realize it when something that used to matter suddenly feels gone. Not missing, not destroyed, just hollow. That's what happened to Cartoon Network. You wake up one day and you're like, what happened to this one channel that I used to watch when I was a kid? Because for an entire generation, it wasn't just a TV channel, it was a portal, a place where the weirdest ideas somehow made sense, where the characters felt bigger than life, and where every show felt like it was created by someone who actually remembered what it was like to be a kid.
Man, I'm pretty.
Mama was sleeping, you can tell by the snoring. After 4 times today, Jimmy Stewart gets boring.
But the version of Cartoon Network you grew up with, it doesn't exist anymore, and it didn't vanish overnight. It wasn't one bad show, one bad reboot, or one bad executive decision. It was a slow decline that happened over a course of a decade where creativity was sacrificed for market research, where original storytelling was replaced by brand-friendly noise, and where an entire network forgot what made it special in the first place.
You traitor!
Don't beat me, massa! Please don't beat me, massa! Don't beat that tired old body! No! Don't!
What's this I hear about you whipping slaves? But, never mind the buts. Here's my card. Look me up at my Gettysburg address.
Before the fall, Cartoon Network was a different world entirely. It was messy, experimental, unhinged, in the best ways possible. It didn't just entertain kids, it trusted them. It believed they could handle dark humor, sharper writing, real stakes, and genuine emotions.
In case of evil clown, pull string. Sounds good to me.
Honk, honk.
Because you know that I know that it made cartoons feel real and like you were a part of the story. Shows like Courage the Cowardly Dog were too creepy by today's standards, but that's exactly why kids loved them. Because that stupid dog wasn't afraid to be surreal, uncomfortable, even terrifying. It respected the idea that fear could be fun. Ed, and Eddy didn't teach lessons, it was chaos. There were dumb kid hustlers who wanted to make money. Dexter's Laboratory was a weird science fiction show made for kids who literally thought like inventors. It was a show about an 8-year-old kid genius who was beefing with everyone in the world. And then you had Teen Titans, who took itself seriously enough to have story arcs, villains who mattered, and fights that didn't feel like jokes. Cartoon Network's strength wasn't just animation, it was personality, it was individuality. Every show felt handcrafted, original, unapologetically itself. But somehow along the way, that became inconvenient, not profitable enough, not brand safe, not streamlined for focus groups who wanted predictable, and not creative. And when a company stops listening to its artists, it starts listening to its accountants. And that's when a channel stops being alive and it starts being managed. And that's how the fall began, quietly, invisibly, long before anyone realized something was slipping away. Cartoon Network's golden era didn't just happen. It was built by the people who loved animation more than the profit margins. Creatives were given freedom to experiment. Executives didn't suffocate the ideas, and budgets weren't just slashed just because. And the shows that came out of that era, Samurai Jack, Powerpuff Girls, Courage, Codename Kids Next Door, Ben 10, just to name a few, weren't just hits, they were cultural landmarks. Every child from that era remembers them. Each show felt like it had a soul, and even when the art style was simple, the storytelling wasn't, and that made it special. And when you compare that with today, studios want characters designed to test well instead of resonate. They want colors bright enough to hold a toddler's attention, but not themes deep enough to challenge them. That's how you go from Teen Titans, a series with real plot arcs, emotional depth, and character development, to Teen Titans Go, a show built entirely around 7-minute chaotic loops designed to keep background noise on while kids stare at iPads. Not because artists got worse, but because executives decided that loud and random was cheaper and more profitable than smart and meaningful.
I'm ready.
Before the fall became visible, something happened behind the curtain, something the average viewer never saw. Cartoon Network stopped being run by people who created shows and started being run by those that managed spreadsheets. When Cartoon Network was absorbed deeper into Turner, then Warner Bros, and then folded under layer after layer of merger, it stopped being a network with a vision. It became a brand asset, a checkbox inside of a massive corporation that didn't see cartoons as cultural milestones, only as products to sell other products. Suddenly, every show had to justify itself the same way a cereal brand or a phone app did. Shows were analyzed, tested, measured, and filtered through executives who didn't understand why a creepy pink dog in the middle of nowhere meant something to kids. Shows that were risky became not worth the investment, shows that were too artistic became too niche, and shows that were too deep became not rewatchable enough. It was creativity versus corporate efficiency, and efficiency won. The best way to put it is that Cartoon Network was repurposed, and the people making the decisions, they weren't artists, they weren't storytellers, they weren't even animators. They were people whose job was to protect a budget and not some childhood.
Hello.
Yeah, this is a pizza delivery guy. I have 50 pizzas here that you ordered.
Sounds great. Bring them over.
You ordered 50 pizzas?
Yeah, and hot wings. Get here quick, okay? Your mom's like totally starving.
Yeah, okay, I gotta go.
The strange part is that even as corporate pressure increased, Cartoon Network entered its last-ditch effort wave of brilliance in the 2010s. You had the birth of shows like Adventure Time, Regular Show, Gumball, Over the Garden Wall. This was the final breath of genuine creativity, the moment Cartoon Network still felt alive. Adventure Time didn't just entertain, it built a world. Regular Show didn't just make you laugh, it understood teenagehood better than most live-action sitcoms at that time.
Hey ladies, do you like buns?
Yeah.
Then check out these butt cheeks.
Excuse me.
And then you had Gumball, which wasn't just funny, it was one of the smartest, self-aware shows the network had ever made.
Hi, I'm here to sit on the baby.
What?
Well, duh, I'm the babysitter.
Richard, where did you find that guy?
On the internet?
But while the shows were thriving, the structure behind them was collapsing. Creators began burning out, budgets were tightened, episodes were shortened, production schedules were crushed, and executives demanded safer concepts, brighter colors, simpler arcs, and more rewatch value. This was the era where you could feel Cartoon Network trying to be two things at once, a creative powerhouse fueled by passionate artists, and then a corporate machine trying to reduce every show to a formula. For a few years, the artists still won, but the cracks were forming, and once the last of these great shows ended, there wasn't anything ready to replace them. And it wasn't because the artists stopped submitting ideas, it was because the network stopped approving them. When the golden era ended, Cartoon Network had a choice: invest in new creative universes or chase profit by lowering the cost of everything. And yeah, they chose the second option. This is the moment animation shifted from storytelling to manufacturing. Studios were handed smaller budgets but were expected to produce more episodes. The result? Cheaper animation styles, faster production cycles, and shows that relied more on the chaotic visuals than meaningful writing. This is how you go from Courage the Cowardly Dog, a show animated with personality and intention, to shows that look like they were produced in a week by a marketing team that only understands bright colors and loud noises.
Come on, Dr. Fox. What would you use to measure the manifold density of an antimatter particle? Oh, science!
And hold on, let me give you a comparison. Compare the original Teen Titans, like we talked about before, with the Teen Titans Go, right? The original has emotion arcs, stakes, and villains, like we talked about, but the Teen Titans Go isn't, as you may say, a bad show. It's just not built with the same DNA. It was built to fill time, to be background noise, to be profitable, not memorable. And then came reboots: Thundercats, Roar, Ben 10 again. Even Scooby-Doo was redesigned into a version that felt more like a corporate statement than cartoons. It felt like those shows were created to check a box rather than tell a story. And the excuse was always the same. It was that kids don't want serious stories anymore. But that wasn't true. Kids didn't change, the studio's priorities did. What replaced art wasn't innovation, it was cost-cutting disguised as creativity, and the audience could tell.
And this pen was used by President Wilson to sign the 19th Amendment.
What's that?
The amendment allowing women to vote. Until then, not a woman here could vote no matter what age.
Why'd they go and do that? I didn't think chicks liked to vote.
Yeah!
Uh-oh.
Another factor we need to talk about is that for the most of the 2000s, Cartoon Network thrived because cable TV thrived. Every home with a cable box had Cartoon Network sitting at channel 56 or 32 or 49. And it all depended on where you were in the world or in the country. Kids didn't choose what to watch. There was a preset schedule and the network curated their entire childhoods. But then streaming hit like a meteor. Netflix went from mail-in DVD services to a global giant in just a few years. By 2016, cable TV was losing over 2 million subscribers every single year. By 2020, that number hit 6 million a year. Families weren't tuning in anymore. They were just logging into their Netflix accounts because it was cheaper. And as billions of dollars shifted from cable contracts into streaming platforms, Cartoon Network's parent companies began relocating budgets. The message was simple. Cartoon Network isn't the future, HBO Max is. So instead of building new worlds for the network, studios were told to focus on streaming libraries, binge watch formats, and IP recycling. Cartoon Network didn't just fall behind, it was abandoned by its very industry it helped dominate. For almost a decade, or actually longer than that, childhood had a structure. After school, you turn on the TV, you watch Cartoon Network. But when cable died, the ritual died with it. Kids stopped watching TV as a shared experience. They moved to iPads, YouTube, Fortnite, TikTok, places where attention spans were shredded into 15-second intervals. By 2023, over 85% of kids watched more videos online than cable television, and Cartoon Network's ratings dropped by double-digit percentages every single year. This shift wasn't just technological, it was also psychological. Cartoon Network used to control the pace of a child's entertainment, and now parents and their kids had more control.
Good thing I had that ball of twine in my pocket, Billy, or we might never have gotten this thing home. I think I see a low bridge coming up!
As the industry shifted, so did the content, and instead of focusing on a universal storytelling like adventure, comedy, and imagination, networks began injecting messages that felt more like corporate strategy to get a certain viewpoint out. Old school cartoons were weird, creative, and chaotic, and sometimes downright disturbing.
Return the slab. What? Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
But they never felt like they were preaching anything, or pushing a certain viewpoint. Like, Courage was scary, Samurai Jack was violent, Codename Kids Next Door was a rebellion, and Ben 10 was a sci-fi fantasy at its purest. And then you have Scooby-Doo, which was a mystery and a comedy, and not a political think piece. But as newer reboots happened, the underlying intent also changed. One really good example was Scooby-Doo, which got reinvented into a show that was then criticized for being a political statement and pushing an agenda rather than being a normal show. Classic characters were redesigned not to expand the story, but to fit a market-tested identity checklist. Studios started adding ideology first, plot second, which was a reversal of how storytelling was supposed to work. This wasn't about diversity being bad. Diversity existed naturally in shows like Ben 10, Teen Titans, Static Shock, and Gumball. Those shows had representation because it made sense, not because a corporate memo required it. As the industry chased streaming numbers and engagement, something shifted in kids' entertainment. Corporate America realized it could turn cartoons into mental stimuli. In corporate America, kids weren't being raised on arcs and narratives anymore, they were being raised on dopamine cycles. And they realized, even more than they did before, that if you could tap into the dopamine cycle, you could tap into a multi-billion-dollar industry. By 2022, over 60% of kids' screen time wasn't spent watching full shows, it was spent on TikTok-style clips, reaction content, hyper-edited Brainrot videos. And Cartoon Network responded the only way corporations know how. They tried mimicking it. Shows became louder, shorter, and faster, built for children who already had been conditioned to watch content every few seconds. Characters talked faster, scenes cut quicker, stories became optional, and chaos became the strategy. Instead of reclaiming its identity, Cartoon Network tried to copy a culture it could never compete with, and in the process it lost the very thing that made it matter in the first place.
You can't get married. Why not? Black people can't marry white people.
Hey now.
It's Garnet from Steven Universe.
Kids, don't be racist.
If there was a single moment that sealed Cartoon Network's fate, it was the Warner Bros. And Discovery merger.
But essentially, Cartoon Network and the Warner Brothers Animation Studio are going to be one.
A corporate event that didn't just shake up the entertainment industry, it dismantled entire libraries. The new leadership didn't see cartoons as art, they saw them as line items, expenses on spreadsheets. And when a corporation wants to cut cost, art is the first thing to disappear. Dozens of Cartoon Network shows were removed overnight, not because they were unpopular, but because deleting them allowed the company to claim tax write-offs worth millions of dollars. Animation wasn't just underfunded at this point, it was treated as disposable. When Cartoon Network started struggling, it was then folded into Warner Bros. Animation, which made it lose its independence and its identity even more. Through this merger, layoffs gutted talent across departments. Projects died quietly before they ever reached the public. And here, this wasn't a decline anymore, it was an execution. Not by failure, but by corporate math, by a giant that was so much bigger than Cartoon Network could have ever been.
What's wrong, Private? Are you experiencing some discomfort? Oh, do you want your mama?
Mama? Where? Mama, help! I'm trapped in boot camp!
Every network is only as strong as the people behind it, and Cartoon Network had one of the greatest creators of our century. But when the environment shifted, so did they. Pendleton Ward was gone after Adventure Time, J.G. Quinto moved on after Regular Show, Rebecca Sugar left after Steven Universe, and Gendy Tartakovsky made The Legend of the Samurai Jack and then vanished into other studios. These weren't just creators, they were the backbone of modern animation, and they made Cartoon Network, the minds that defined an entire childhood. But when budget tightened, creative freedom shrank, and executives interfered, the artists realized something the public hadn't even figured out back then. It was that Cartoon Network wasn't Cartoon Network anymore. Their new ideas didn't fit the brand strategy. Their pitches were rejected for being too niche, too complex, too expensive. The spirit of experimentation that once made Cartoon Network unstoppable was now gone, so the artists left. To simply put it, the day Cartoon Network lost its creators was the day it lost its future.
Auditioning, Johnny 2x4, and Plank.
Anytime you're ready, kid.
Plank tells jokes. Knock him dead, buddy. Oh, that's a good one. You're killing me.
By the early 2020s, Cartoon Network wasn't a network anymore, it was just a loop. Endless reruns, Teen Titans Go for hours on end, reboots targeting audiences too young to notice what was missing, and a schedule that felt like it was running on autopilot. Cartoon Network wasn't killed by one show, one decision, or one executive. It was killed by a decade of tiny cuts that drained its lifeblood until all that remained was its name. A memory kept alive by nostalgia instead of new creativity. The studio that once shaped childhood now struggled to justify its own existence. And for the first time ever, people stopped asking, what's next? Because everyone quietly realized nothing was ever coming. When you look back now, the fall of Cartoon Network isn't just the end of a channel, it's the end of a part of history that birthed childhood memories far more nostalgic than anything that we have now. Cartoon Network taught kids to be weird, to be brave, to care about stories, and to feel something deeper than just another dopamine hit. It gave the world Courage the Cowardly Dog, Codename Kids Next Door, Samurai Jack, Ben 10, Gumball, Dexter's Laboratory, Adventure Time, Regular Show, and Chowder. And it did one thing, it helped define the imagination of an entire generation, who were lucky and fortunate enough to watch these shows before they were gone. And that being said, thank you for watching, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.